Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Data Standard Audio Experience. I'm here today with Jeremy Eastwood, the Director of Engineering from Drone Deploy. And today we're speaking about growing the engineering team. So welcome to the show, Jeremy. It's such a pleasure to have you today.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me along. Great to be here.
Yeah. And could you go ahead and tell the audience more about your background?
Sure, yeah. So I've been at Drone Deploy since basically the beginning of the company. So I've been there just over 7 years now. Before that, I was in kind of academia and then moved across to join the kind of startup life as one of the kind of first employees of the company and really kind of grown and evolved my position as with the company. We're now to about 160 or so people, and kind of I currently kind of oversee most of the engineering organization. So it's a kind of very brief kind of overview there. Yeah, so my background then was in aerospace engineering and in kind of academia, and then kind of started doing that at Drone Deploy for the first couple of months and shortly moved into kind of pure software. It's been kind of software engineering since then.
Yeah, very exciting. You mentioned that you've been at Drone Deploy for quite a while now, from the beginning. So
Yeah.
how has it changed over the time to what it is today?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, when it first joined, it was kind of the founders, three founders, and myself, and I think maybe one other person. And we were kind of back then, we were largely kind of building drones and planes, pulling polystyrene planes together and soldering bits and pieces together and trying to get these things to fly. And so it was a very scrappy startup, do whatever it needs to do to kind of get some good results, make something successful. And it's kind of just really scaled into a kind of more traditional software as a service cloud software solution or company over time. And so really, I mean, I probably feel like I've done kind of 7 or 8 different jobs in that entire time. As I said, start with kind of scrapping things together to starting to build out some software, starting to find customers who think this is a good idea, starting to then find a more specific product market fit, starting to then scale that product market fit out and to kind of be a very sustainable business a sustainable solution we can go and sell and work with lots of customers in, and then making that more efficient and reliable and more kind of broadly applicable over time. So it's been loads of all the kind of different stages of a kind of traditional startup, but that's kind of in a nutshell, that's how some of the things have changed on the kind of startup side.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the work that you and your team are using is machine learning, and there's a lot of different moving parts to machine learning. So, how is your industry or your company specifically at Drone Deploy using machine learning?
Yeah, absolutely. So, give a quick overview of what the company does, and we basically the idea is to kind of make simple consumer drones, make them to really easy to use tools to kind of digitize reality, digitize your job site and gather useful and valuable information and answer questions, give you information. So you go out there, you want to know if you're on a construction site, okay, how much are we on track? Fundamentally, is progress being made at the right rate? Or if I'm farming, is the yield of my crop going to be good this year? Is there any kind of damage or what have you? So it's really getting that information. And so that's kind of started out as us enabling drones to kind of map these sites and these scenes and get that kind of visual information and kind of then do analysis on it. Maybe looking, again, the construction site, it's maybe looking for damage or defects or saying, okay, is this concrete being poured when it should have been? On farm, saying, okay, are these crops healthy or not healthy? So kind of doing a lot of visual inspections. And machine learning is a kind of natural piece which layers in on top of that to start automating that. Because the kind of vision, the kind of grand vision where we think we're going to is a lot of this process is fully automatic. People don't want to be going out and flying drones or taking pictures or moving robots around with a remote control. What they want is the final information, and they want that regularly, and they want to get a report which says, yes, you're on track with the construction, or no, your concrete hasn't been poured on time and you're behind here, you're a week behind, or your crop needs more fertilizer in this area because there's going to be a problem. And so we're gradually kind of chipping away at those different stages of automation. And so where the machine learning's coming in is basically we've got the tools and kind of analysis capabilities to let people come in and look at the imagery, look at the data and say, okay, here's a problem. Here's, again, an issue on a construction site or an issue with crops. And then they can tag that and in our system and say, okay, well, this is, I'm categorizing the problems and what have you. And naturally, then the next thing to do is kind of layer in a machine learning model to say, let's do that automatically. And so we've worked with a few different industries doing things like start off with basic stuff, like people wanted to go in and count all the cars in parking lots. So they mapped a big parking lot of, like a Home Depot or something, like a big kind of department store. And they'd say, okay, how many cars are there at different times during the day? Then they go and annotate each one of those. And now we can build that essentially gives us the training data to then work with them to build a machine learning model and do that kind of automatically. So we did that for things like cars, trees in orchards to see, how many trees are there, has there been any damage? So that's kind of one of the things we're doing, is really just we've got a lot of the experts and our customers who really understand their industries, labeling this data because that's what we have to do today. And now we can work with them to build custom machine learning models to do all of that automatically and kind of work with them to get their kind of ideal end result, which is we go out there and then we get a result, we get an answer, like how many trees are there, how many cars are there, is there any damage, and they don't have to have any interaction. So that's kind of one of the things that we're really working on with kind of the machine learning side.
Yeah, super interesting stuff you're working on right now. And with all of this, how are you analyzing the success or the performance that your company is having right now?
Yeah, and that's really and kind of on the subject of data in general. I mean, that's really one of the kind of big challenges over time. Is it's a very, I kind of gave you the brief overview of what we do as a company. You go out and fly a drone, and that means you've got to fly this, have a flying robot in a real 3D environment that's going to go off, take pictures and land and upload that and process that and then get the right kind of information out of it afterwards. It's like a really long, complex workflow. And our goal is to make that 100% successful every time and really easy to do. And so there's so many different things that could go wrong with any of that. You're working with hardware, you're working with the real 3D environment. And so one of the things that we are doing is kind of trying to really understand all the different stages of that workflow. So monitoring, adding, really kind of layering in lots of observability there. So we can track how successful customers are from the very beginning. The intention, I want to go and map this construction site or produce a kind of inspection report of this construction site, all the way through to I've successfully achieved that and got value out of it and got lots of people interacting with it. And so how successful are people being there? And where people are not being successful there, are they dropping off at different stages in that process? Why is that? And so really that just means layering in lots and lots of metrics and that kind of stuff. And at each stage, kind of adding in all the kind of contextual information about who the customer is, what they might be wanting to do, what they're trying to do, what the situation, what the kind of real world situation they're in at that time. By that I mean thinking about if you're out there flying a drone, you've got your mobile device out there. Was it really poor cell connectivity? Was it really hard for you to actually connect that to the internet to kind of upload that information? Were you using a really old cell phone, which is not as performant? And then also in the other sense, kind of what industry were you as a customer? Are you agriculture? Are you construction? That really changes what the different kind of workflows you're trying to achieve are. So they're the kind of two main things that we've really worked on over time, is just adding in lots more data. In general, we're always pushing more data, but lots kind of more observability and lots more kind of parameters or higher cardinality of that data at each stage. So we can really dig in and say, okay, these people were not successful. Why was that? Was it, okay, this was all on the agriculture side. Okay, what was going wrong with them? Well, they all had really poor cell connectivity again. So, okay, so how do we get around that? And how can we fix that with some kind of the UX changes, make it kind of clearer to them how to work in poor connectivity areas, that kind of stuff. So that's really one of the things that we've used, how we've kind of deployed data and lots of data to try and make everything very, seamless and successful and simple for our customers. And that's really the kind of goal of the company.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And with all of the colleagues that you work with, how do you see success within the people that you work with, and what makes them successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of this is going to be familiar to anyone who works in a startup and has especially been there kind of early on. Especially early stages of a startup, you don't know what your job's going to be in 6 months, maybe even 2 months' time. And so I think a few of the things that really have made the most successful people in engineering, but also just the company in general, is, adaptability, first of all, because like I said, you start out and maybe you're hired. Okay, I was hired to help get the drones flying, keep drones flying, and then we moved away from hardware very quickly in the first few months, and then I was having to learn how to pull apart cameras and work with that. Then I was actually writing the software, so it's kind of adaptability and not being, no, I just came here to do this one very specific thing, but as a startup you've got to jump in and do all sorts of things. And really the reason why is because you have to be like very mission focused, right? So you have to make sure that you are aligned with what the company's trying to achieve overall, and because you will have to adapt your job and what you're doing and learn new stuff and grow to make the company more successful. So you have to grow with the company. So we, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we talked about the different stages of a startup, scrapping things together, product market fit, scaling and growth. And there's different mindsets. There's kind of people who are very, very inventive, very creative. I'm going to find an amazing solution to this tough problem, get something scrappy, get it out the door in a day and see if it works, to where we are today, which is, no, we have to be very, predictable, stable, really high quality, really reliable, thinking about metrics and observability. And so it's a huge mind shift between those stages, but really it's kind of people who have grown with the company and said, okay, well, that made us successful back then, but now we're in a different stage and we have to consider different things. So I think the growth and adaptability and really, what does the company need from me right now? And I think a final thing that kind of layers in with that is a sense of kind of ownership and responsibility. I think one of the really exciting and things about working in a startup, one of the amazing opportunities, is that you can really grow your career very fast in a startup, right? There's so much to be done. There's kind of at least 50% fewer people than there needs to be to get all the things done. And so everyone needs to kind of just take on more responsibility, take on new jobs. And so I think the people who've been most successful are the people who don't wait to be told to take on a responsibility for something, or take full ownership of something. They just kind of naturally do that. It's like, oh, here's a problem, not I'm going to go and find someone to tell about it, but I'm going to go and solve that problem, or I'm going to go and fix it or make it better, that kind of stuff. So I think there's some of the things: adaptability and a real sense of responsibility and ownership, and that sees people being successful as a startup grows and kind of transitions at different stages.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And it was so great to have you on the show today, Jeremy. Where can everyone find you online to connect with you?
Awesome. Yeah. So best place is probably LinkedIn. So I'm just Jeremy Eastwood on LinkedIn. You can always search for Drone Deploy. That's probably the easiest. I'm on Twitter, but don't tweet a huge amount. So yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way to go.
Yeah, perfect. And I want to say thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us today and just explaining your story at Drone Deploy and just hearing how it's changed and evolved over the past years from a small startup to a team of maybe a bigger team right now that you're working with. So thanks so much for sharing about your journey, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.